Hey, welcome to another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty, real talk about cheating. It's Chump Lady, Tracy Shorn here with Sarah Gorel, and today we're going to be talking about the people that you lost in your breakup or divorce, and maybe the people you gained too. We got some voicemails and we got some submissions on social media that we're going to share with you. But Sarah, I'm going to ask you, did you lose anybody in your breakup that
I
was
think it's the friendships, no, because I suddenly realized that it was kind of he tagged on to my friendships, so they were there intact. But what I did lose was his family, obviously, his
yeah.
mother, that extended family, and I'd always done quite a lot for his mum, and sorted out the Christmases and was the and I didn't so much lose her because we weren't. I wasn't terribly keen, as many people are not, on their mother-in-law in the first place. But
Yeah.
what I lost was that sense that she was on my side. I know her loyalty is going to be with her son. I always knew that
Yeah.
because I would probably be on my son's side, whatever. But it was the fact that she so suddenly and dramatically turned. So she was somebody
Mm.
who had been the victim of an affair herself. She was so angry about this that even when I got together with her son and we got married, she refused to be in the same marquee as the ex.
Mm.
We thought there was going to be some kind of fight between them because she hated him so much. She was so angry about the affair for many, many years. But the moment her beloved precious son has an affair, her first response to him and his affair partner was, "We must welcome this lovely young lady into the family." So I
God.
suddenly realized that I was not a daughter-in-law that she loved. I was just a dispensable product
Yeah.
in her son's life and in her life. And that was quite hard to deal with, really.
Oh, I would think so. I mean, and her cognitive dissonance, I mean, she doesn't sound like a super healthy person. I mean, I realize you're not going to disown your son, but you can certainly be horrified, disappointed, and you don't have to turn on the victim. I mean, and I mean, there in the stories, there's a lot of that. It's that I thought this person was my ally, or at the very least, I thought they were a safe person, and then they blame me for this happening, and that just seems to be really common story.
It was interesting as well because there was a time when I was being I was fully embroiled in the pick me dance, and my ex had told me that he was leaving this other woman and that he was not going to go back to her, and then he took my children out for the afternoon, and I thought it was just him taking the children out on their own, but
Hmm.
he bumped into his affair partner, and they all went
Coincidence.
bowling together. They just happened to be in the
Oh yeah,
same place at the same time,
serendipity.
and of course, my then 4-year-old child came straight back home and told me
Mm.
that this had happened. And I lost I couldn't believe it. I got very angry with my ex at this point. I had until this time been quite sort of reasoned and calm, thinking, oh, bless him, he's going through a midnight crisis, got to be massage his ego, all the rest of it. I lost my temper with him. I was
Hmm.
so cross that he would do that and involve my children in his deceit. And then my it was my son's birthday. At the same time, my mother-in-law had sent him a birthday present. So I phoned up to thank her, could put my son on the phone, who was very young at the time. My son who was about 5.
Hmm.
And she shouted at him and said, "I want to speak to your mother immediately." And then she
Like
got
you're in trouble.
and then I got this abuse down the phone where she said, "How dare you tell my son what he can do with these are my family, and it's none of your business if he wants to introduce her to this lovely young lady."
Oh
And
my God.
that was the point that I then sent a text to her
You're not
saying,
even divorced yet, right?
"No, we weren't
Yeah.
divorced. It was during the whole processing period." So I just went, "Right,
Oh
no,
my
that's
God.
it. I don't want anything to do with you ever again." And it was actually quite satisfying, and
Mm.
that was it. And
Good riddance.
but I think it's just astonishing at the double standards, the values that people have, where you think that they believe one thing, and then when it comes to you,
Mhm.
I bet it's not uncommon for people who've been the victim of affairs to be very unsupportive when it happens to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's
I think it
almost as if
says, yeah, it says a lot about how people handle vulnerability. And I think it's just scares some people shitless. And it brings out their harpoons and they just go in for the kill. Whereas other people, and even people that you didn't know very well kind of come out with these great big hearts and with empathy and who get it, and it really, until you go through a crisis like this, you really don't know who's who, right? And it's just such a mind fuck, especially when it's
Do you know the other
mother-in-law.
thing that sometimes happens as well? So we had a very close friend who was really good friends with my husband and I when my son was a baby,
Hmm.
and they used to go off to the pub together, and I used to stay in with the well, I had three young children at that time, and I didn't really care. They were off. I was quite happy just pottering around with the baby. And then when this particular friend found out about this affair, he said, "Oh, that doesn't surprise me because he was trying to do it to you then when I had a 6-week-old baby. He
Oh
was
my
trying it on
God.
with the woman that he met in the pub." And he had intervened and said, "Look, if you do anything, I'm going to tell Sarah." But I kind of wish he'd told. I understand why he didn't tell
Hmm.
me at the time. Kind of wish he had. It would have been nice. And this is a dilemma I know that features a lot on your blog. Do you tell if you know someone's having an affair? Do you tell? And I understand why it's so difficult, but I kind of wish that I'd had that knowledge then
Yeah.
before I'd had another child and before I found out for myself and before I got more immersed in the relationship. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpick here. We've had a lot of response to this, so let's start. There's inevitably some mother-in-law ones,
Oh, of
and
course. Mother-in-law. Yes.
yeah, this is Michelle's story.
On D Day, when my husband walked out that same day, I I think it was that day I called his mom straight away, and she's a narcissist and a half. She ended up crying on the phone and giving me this big dramatic thing and telling me it couldn't be true, and she'd support me. And it wasn't even 24 hours later that she completely turned on me like a viper. She and Fuckwit's dad, they both ended up completely abandoning me and then making up stories about how I was clearly the one that had kicked out Fuckwit. Fuckwit had nowhere to go, and he ended up going to his coworker's house, and thank goodness she took him in, and then they fell in love. So, they were just well, no love lost. The sad part for me was that my sister, who had always cut me out, she has some mental health issues, and she had cut me out of her life for years. And when she found out what happened to me, she let me back in. And then as soon as I started recovering and finding a life and being happy again, she cut me out again because she liked me broken. So, these are things that happen, and it was only a few people in my life really I had to do this with, and but just unfortunately, my sister is the biggest loss for me.
This one, okay, I thought this one was particularly pernicious because not only does the mother-in-law turn on Michelle, but she creates a whole new story, a whole new narrative. It's not that her precious, son abandoned his family. No, now the narrative is that Michelle kicked him out and he had nowhere to go except into the arms of this caring other woman who just happened to be there with an available apartment to move into. I mean, talk about insult to injury. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, this is staggering, but again, I suppose what it is, it's somebody trying to preserve their image of their own child. So if she blame shifts and says, "Oh, it wasn't him, it was you," then she's holding on to that image of her precious child
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah. And she doesn't have to. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess that's a lot less frightening to think that your own kid could do it. And I think the other part that was another kind of bait and switch here that is difficult is she thinks, when she's going through this horrible time, that her sister's there for her, her sister from whom she'd been estranged, and then they kind of reconnect. Again, how are people when you're vulnerable? So she's vulnerable. She thinks her sister's embracing her. And then the minute she's healthy and back on her feet, her sister dumps her, um, in the words of Michelle, because she likes me broken. That's also a really horrific thing that, y- you know, I, yeah, I mean, so much. so much trauma from that. Who can you trust? Who's safe? And when the people closest to you aren't safe, what does that mean?
Sadly, we have a lot of examples of this. So let's hear Mary's story.
Okay.
I lost so many people during the divorce. I lost cheater ex. I lost my in laws, my so called family friends. My very best friend of decades told me that she loved him and would continue to be his friend. I lost my sisters. My oldest sister drove to my house in a car that I gave her to tell me that she would not help me, to not ask me for anything. My youngest sister blew up at me on the phone and was screaming, so I just hung up and deleted that contact and blocked her. So I'm estranged from my family of origin. My mother is demented and in memory care, but 3 days after I had left him, she told me it took two to tango and I should consider what I did. So I lost so many people, but the ones I kept are pure gold.
Ooh, this whole "it takes two to tango," which her mother, who has dementia, even she came up out of the fog long enough to like blame her daughter for being cheated on. Well done, mom. Um, it's just so. I realize it's a trope, and there's probably a generational blame shift to this too. But to hear that from your own mother, as you know, she's failing. This might be the last cogent thing she says to you. It's just really gotta hurt. And, to lose your friend, to see them side with your cheater against you, that's gotta hurt too. I,
Yeah, and to this whole two to tango business, when you've just been trying your best and you haven't been having an affair, I think that's a very hurtful thing that is again quite not an uncommon thing that people say. But I like the fact that, yes, people showed themselves up to be not terribly supportive, but the friends that stay there, the family members that stay there, they also show you who they are, and they show that there are people that are maybe completely on your side in a situation where you didn't think they would be. You didn't think that they would be the ones to show up for you.
hmm Yeah, she calls them pure gold. And I think there is that kind of clarity after you go through something like this. And I think it's a test of your own values. Like, who do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? If you come across someone in your life who's been chumped, who's been betrayed, are you going to be the show up friend? Are you going to be, unequivocal in your support? I think for a lot of people who go through it, I can't say I had this happen with my cheater because honestly, he had really no real friends, but I see it a lot on the blog, is that when you're devastated and you're down, obviously you're not a really good hang, right? You're not someone who is fun to be around. Whereas shallow people, narcissistic people, are like, they're fun. You know? And people who are shallow are going to hang out with the shallow. They don't want to be around a mess. They want to be around the delightful person who the heart wants what the heart wants, who's off with schmoopy and life is great. And, they're going to invite you to the barbecue. That's who people want to be with. Um, and so much of the reconciliation advice that's so stupid is like, fake it, show him what he's missing, be shiny, be bright, you know, which is so inauthentic. I'm like, if people don't understand your broken heart, fuck them. That's my feeling.
I love this next story because this is not a loss, but this
Mhm.
is a gain, and this is someone who was her ex's co-worker.
Hi, everyone. This is Learning Not to Dance in Ohio. And instead of saying who I lost in this whole crazy ride, I wanted to share a quick story of who I gained. My ex had a woman that he had worked with for several years, and I had become friendly with her. I wouldn't say we were close friends by any means, but we were friendly. And when she heard what my ex had done in cheating and leaving, she called me up to see how I was doing and asked if she could come over and support me in any way. And At that point, I was in this spewing the whole story to anyone who would listen stage of discovery. And her response when she heard the whole story was simply, "What an idiot." This woman has become one of my closest friends and has been a great source of support and a cheerleader as I have gained my life. If she didn't have such a distinctive name, I would say her name, but I don't want to get her in any trouble. But thank you to my friend in New York for supporting me and helping me to my gain a life stage of recovery.
Yeah. I love the line, "What an idiot." Did anyone say that to you when you got chumped? Because I have a what an idiot story.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I did have a couple of friends that were aghast and did say that as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So my what an idiot story, it wasn't me necessarily, but it was Paul, my husband. So when I moved to Texas and we got married, we had this next door neighbor, God bless her, Mrs. Allred, who had been married to the town mayor. And I have to kind of set this up, but it's like Texas. It's like a small town in Texas. And I am from the north. I do not understand this culture. I don't understand bless your heart. I'm in tech. I don't know anything about Texas. And people were a little suspicious at first because Paul was like an attorney and had an office on the town square. And I think the narrative that people believed, and I'm sure his cheating ex-wife put out there, is that I was the schmoopy, and that and that you would think the lawyer guy is out cheating, but that wasn't the case at all. I mean, his ex was like a serial cheater with a long checkered past. Anyway, so Mrs. Allred, she's a little suspicious of me. She's my next door neighbor, and she would talk to me over the fence, and my son Robert went and walked her morbidly obese dog Boone, and I think she thought, she's okay. If she's sending her son over here to walk my dog for me, So one day she has me over on her porch and she just kind of, in a very polite Southern way, interrogates me about what am I doing in Texas and how did I meet Paul? And being me, I just tell the truth. I'm like, well, we were both cheated on in our former marriages, and we met, and after in New Orleans, and da da da. Da. I told her the whole story, and 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 I'm telling you, in that small town, that the word spread, and now people who've been giving me the cold shoulder are suddenly like warm and friendly where they weren't before because the story's out that Paula was the chump. And then one day, to the idiot point, one day I'm just out there and she just comes up to me out of nowhere and she goes, "That name of ex-wife, what an idiot. He is a wonderful man. What an idiot." And
I tell
I'm
you what else
like,
this story highlights, though, is that there are people that strongly disapprove of affairs and are
yeah,
prepared to say it. You know,
if
it shows
if
that it's
they
not
know the
everyone
story.
aloof.
Yeah, if they know the story. And that's the thing. Usually cheaters are out there with their narratives first, or. I mean, there are people who have really shit values who are like, yeah, you're cheating. Okay, whatever, you're fun. And then there are people who in this case had the wrong idea. So
Well,
I
here's another
love
one.
that.
This is yeah, it is good to know that there are people that will, stand up and say what they truly believe in, and be a bit suspicious about how your relationship started. I love this next one though, and
Mhm.
well, I don't. I mean, this just highlights the fact that friends can sometimes do some blame shifting themselves. So let's have a listen to this one.
Hi, this is Sin Chump. I lost a friend that was actually pretty instrumental in me making a career change in my mid 30s and going back to school. And when the affair came out, she pretty much looked back on the time in which I went back to school and said it was because of something that was missing and lacking in some hole in me. So I was surprised at that response when the affair came out. She was very super supportive of my ex at the time, um, that he must be some timid forest creature. And that is why he cheated, essentially, was kind of her stance on it. And my response to that was to just kind of move on and exit the relationship. There was nothing there for me. Clearly, we have different values when it comes to friendships.
I, I like that she recognized that they have different values, you know, and she let this friend go who supported her ex and blamed her.
And
Yeah,
it's not dissimilar to last week when with the letter saying, what do you do? You've got a really good friend, and then your friend proves to not be on your side. And I think what we said then is that sometimes you just have to say, it's run its course. If someone can't be there when I really need them, and that they're going to side with someone who has hurt me profoundly, then it's time to say, that's not my friend anymore.
yeah, move on. And the other thing that I find so corrosive and disgusting about this story is that this person's saying, well, there must be something missing in you. You know, there's something inadequate about you that made him cheat. And I would think, okay, this is a rational person. Even if you thought that, right? Even if you had those victim blamey thoughts in your head, it's a whole next level to say them, you know, to say that ugly thing to the person who this happened to. I mean, to me, you're just asking to be dumped as a friend. Because if someone says that to you and then you still keep being their friend, that's a shit sandwich that nobody should eat in a friendship ever. You know, anyway, I just had to, ugh, don't,
Unfortunately, as always, we have many examples and many submissions. Now, these next ones are from your blog, and let's
yes.
hear what Fabulous has to say.
Fabulous says, my kids lost all of their relatives on their father's side, as I did. Why? Because he forbade them from having anything to do with us. My mother-in-law was communicating with me until he blocked my number and basically told them they'd be dead to him if they talked to me or the kids. I also lost my best friend because she was the wife of his best friend. That hurt. She just ghosted me right after my dad died by not showing up to his funeral or communicating with me in any other way. She had told me she'd be there. Fun fact, he was with his schmoopy when I called to tell him that my dad had died. We were still married in reconciliation mode. I lost my faith community because, not kidding, divorce is viewed as contagious, and how dare I go to an attorney and not let the local religious negotiator settle things. The local religious guy said basically, your husband is amazingly stubborn and toxic, do what you need to do. But we gained far more. The kids are their authentic selves and happy. I reset my career after 50, after having been a stay-at-home mom for nearly 20 years, and am doing well. I've gained new friends and new support.
So did anybody treat you like divorce is contagious? Because I have certainly had that experience when I was a young single mom. And I think, you know, in the States anyway, in certain religious communities, there's definitely the feeling that divorce is the sin. You know, whatever led to the divorce, whatever, you know, hate the sin, love the sinner. But the real horrible thing is that you dumped him, that you left. How dare you, you Jezebel. And people, you know, this woman, she lost her faith community. And, you know, I, yeah, it's just,
But again, I
lost a
think it's
lot.
very easy when you look back on people's stories and you hear this, and how devastating to not only lose your partner, but also to lose the community that you thought were on your side and part of your life. But what's so inspiring is, how much they've actually gained as well. A new career, kids that are happy, new friends, new support, better people.
Yeah. I mean, and it's no small feat. So she says she's over 50 and having been a stay-at-home mother for 20 years. To reinvent that's just next level mightiness. Fabulous. So well done.
And I think that's another reason that people stay with people, because not because they necessarily think, oh, it's kind of what they know. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily think, oh, this is a great relationship. I really want to stay in it. Because sometimes when you analyze it, you think, actually, it's pretty appalling. I've been putting up with a lot myself. But they're too scared of the alternative. So that whole, oh, I've got to make new friends. I've got to start a new career. I've got to I've got to make a new life. I've been immersed in this one for 20, 30 years. It's incredibly daunting.
Yeah. And I did edit some of these down. And I will say about this woman, she said it took 4 to 5 years to like rebuild her life. So don't think anybody who's listening that like switch or change, it gets better. But it's worth rebuilding that new life. You can do it, right? It's just a bit of an arc to get there. But
Let's hear now what Jeff has to say about this.
Jeff says, I got off pretty light in that department. She's kind of a shit friend, so she drove off most of her hometown friends due to some pettiness or another, and ran off a lot of our common friends as well. It was telling when I lamented that we stopped getting invited to one particular function, and years down the line she was like, oh yeah, I told them we weren't interested. Biggest loss was my in-laws. By and large, I liked them, and never had a cross word with them, and always felt the feeling was mutual. Hindsight being 20/20, she was probably keeping us isolated from each other to keep her hand close to her chest. I have flirted with the idea of reaching out. There was never a proper goodbye, but it's been a year, and they know how to find me too. Ah well. And for a long time, she was my best friend. Until she betrayed me.
so I chose this one because I could kind of relate to this because my ex was the person who's kind of a shit friend, like that guy. And, so this woman was a shit friend. And, people were kind of cluing into that before he got chumped. And, and in this case, his in-laws weren't horrible to him, but he misses his in-laws,
I think you have to accept that inevitably the in-laws, they will, some people manage to keep amazing relationships with their in-laws, but I think that's a really, really tricky one, especially when they're immersed in, the affair partner becoming the new part of their family. But I can relate to this as well because I didn't really lose any friends because the friends that we socialized with were largely my friends. So that was a bonus in that department.
Yeah, I had the friends too. And I remember a shrink I was seeing at the time said, the biggest red flag when you're dating someone is if they don't have any friends. And I believe this kind of trope from my then cheating ex, which was that his ex had gotten all the friends in their divorce. Whoa, that should have been a red flag. But it's also kind of a typical guy story that women are the social extroverted ones and the men tend to just, their friend is their wife and when things go. So it didn't trigger the way it should, but yeah, he didn't show up for other people and other people didn't show up for him. And the other thing Jeff said that I thought was, was kind of a punch was that she was my best friend for a long time until she betrayed me. And you realize this person isn't your friend. And that's advice I give a lot on the blog is that it's really hard for people when they make the discovery that they've been cheated on to switch their thinking. I write a lot. This person is not your friend. This person is not your friend. This person is not your friend. They
Quite
don't.
often they're still telling, I mean, even when my ex cheated on me, he was still telling me that I was his best friend.
Oh, sure.
And and I think that's not uncommon either, that they kind of almost think that they can move off, they can skip off into the sunset with their new partner, but they still think that maybe possibly you might lurk in the background and provide those friendship services, which of
Sure.
course you can't because you've been so badly betrayed that
Well, some
saying, oh,
people
that's
do.
fine, I'll be your friend. I can't be your partner. I've been relegated to a lower role, but I'll quite happily support, do some ego massaging from afar as your best friend. It doesn't work
Right.
like that. Being a good friend involves being loyal and not deceiving someone.
Right. Well, it just shows how they see friendship, which is completely transactional and lopsided, which is that you'll keep doing chump services for me, right? You'll do the ego massaging and the whatever, you'll help move my furniture or whatever, because we're friends. And then, of course, that narrative is all in the whole co-parenting thing. Be friends with your ex, be friends with your ex, be evolved, be a friend. And you should have standards for your friendship. I mean, if you think of friendship in that shallow way, okay, be friends with the person who cheated on you. But I think especially like in the early, when you're first going through it, the reason that the cheater wants you to think you're friends is so that there'll be no consequences, or that you'll soften the blow, or you won't hold them accountable in ways that matter. And that's why they want to be your friend. you
I
know?
think a lot of people who've been cheated on, actually, they are people that have been doing a lot for other people, doing a lot for their partner, and I think it's really hard. I was talking about the fact that I did a lot for my in-laws, so I found it really hard when they just dumped me. And actually, Brit also did an awful lot. So and
Mhm.
partner didn't. So you would imagine that actually they would be loyal to Brit, but that doesn't necessarily happen, as we hear here.
Yeah.
Britt says, I lost my brother-in-law and sisters-in-law, who I considered family. I lost neighbors who I thought were close friends. I babysat their children, visited baby showers, helped when they were sick, took care of their pets when they were on vacation. Meanwhile, X ignored them until a couple of months before D-Day. He suddenly became overly friendly, waving as they drove by, running out to talk to them if they were outside. I was happy to see he was becoming more social. I hoped it would make him happier at home. What I didn't know until later is X was confiding in the neighbors about his concern for my mental well-being. He told them I was never happy and refused to go to therapy. Dabbing tears from his eyes, he told them he loved me, but wasn't sure how much more he could take. Soon after he moved out, he and the neighbors socialized on weekends. He was meeting the wives in our neighborhood for breakfast and coffee. These neighbor friends told me they had never seen X so happy. X is happy. Why aren't you? Why can't you move on? Said within a month of D-Day.
I mean, this one, my heart goes out to her because, yeah. I think it's also just a really common chump mistake that you're a good friend. Should be a stock that trades high, right? You're a show up person. You're the person who organizes the baby shower or whatever it is, the potluck. And you imagine that people would do that for you if the shoe was on the other foot. And then until the day they don't, right? And meanwhile, her ex, all he has to do is be superficially friendly. Hey, hi. Not showing up, just being like the good time Charlie. And he's okay. He's like, he's in. Ugh, ugh, you know?
And it's that whole, it's that whole thing of you're supposed to, because he's happy, you're supposed to suddenly be joyful and happy, and sort of buy into the idea that he's happy because he's not with you anymore, and you were probably the cause of his misery in the first place. I mean,
Right, yes.
there's all sorts of behavior that twisted behavior that goes on to try and turn you into the villain and him
Mhm.
into the victim.
Yeah, I mean, to our earlier point, they've probably gotten to the narrative first, as in the case, what I experienced in small town Texas, is that, yeah, I mean, he told them I was never happy and refused to go to therapy, dabbing tears from his eyes. He told them that he loved me, but he wasn't sure how much more he could take. Oh, the poor thing, poor
I,
sausage.
I think the last submission is inspiring. So this is what Out But Not Down says, and this is, I think, a lesson for all of us.
Out But Not Down says, You've got nothing to lose when you lose fake friends. Joan Jett in the song Fake Friends. That's how I feel about losing most of the so-called friends that I did after separation and divorce. For every person who reached out to me from our rather large circles, there were at least 5 people who didn't. I am not sad about losing many of my ex's family, but I am sad about losing some church friends, colleagues, and most especially a couple that we were once both close to who I considered to be family. Now they are only still close with him, and recently welcomed my ex's girlfriend, whom he started dating just a couple of weeks after our divorce, into their home. Their home and friendship used to be such a safe space for me. It's terrible to think they, too, were fake friends. The good news is that people who have known me the longest, plus some solid friends I gained during the marriage, have cut him off and are great friends to me. I have also made wonderful new friends in my city. It's a road I never expected to be on, and boy, is it illuminating to see the true character of folks in our long-developed network. I now know who is silver and gold and who is dross.
Yeah, you got nothing to lose if you lose fake friends. Thank you, Joan Jett.
It's so true, isn't it? But we sometimes cling on to those fake friends because we're worried that, and I think while you're clinging on to the fake ones, then you're less likely to allow genuine ones into your life. But I think a lot of us, whether we're going through a difficult divorce or not, or whether we've got a partner who's had, I think a lot of us stay friends with people that don't actually enhance our lives or bring anything into our lives because you kind of, you're frightened your friend tally will go down and there won't be anybody else to replace them. So you kind of put up with some fairly dysfunctional and toxic relationships.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think too, when you've been chumped, when you have this like colossal shock and trauma, you question your own worth. You're like, am I lovable? You know, you don't want anybody that might be in your circle that cares for you to disappear. And you internalize it. And look, so much of the narrative out there blames you for it and says that you are unlovable and you did make them do that. And that's why I created the blog, because that's bullshit. But so you are kind of perhaps a bit more likely to cling. And at a time when you shouldn't. That's why you absolutely have to know your worth. And if you're the kind of person, if you're a Brit, you're organizing the baby showers and you're a show up friend, and just remember that you're a stock that trades high. And someone out there would be honored to be your friend. Don't cast your pearls at swine, right? You're a
Yeah,
good friend.
I think that's I just really did find that particular submission quite inspiring, and there will be more good friends out there. It's devastating when people side with a cheater or try and blame shift but actually in the long run, best that they do that and you know who they really are rather
Yeah.
than wasting any more time or energy on them.
Amen. Amen. Hey, should we talk about what our next episode is going to be about?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot in the papers recently about what happens when your affair, when your cheater produces a child with the person they're cheating on you with, and sometimes that happens in secret, as has been highlighted quite recently in the press. I was reading a really interesting article from the half sister of the Oasis brothers, and she was conceived as a result of an affair, and they don't want anything to do with her. Obviously, she's in her 50s now, and she's quite
Mm.
hurt by that. And there was a real discussion that was going on. Sort of some people saying, "Well, actually, if that was my dad that had cheated on my mum, I also wouldn't want anything to do with the affair partner's child." And other people were saying, "No, no, 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 no. But this is they can't help being born. You can't hold on to these thoughts of bitterness." So it's quite an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think both things can be true. I think it's not their fault. And also, shared DNA is often overrated. Like, you don't have to be friends with everybody. Yeah, it's a thorny topic. And of course, it's in the news here. We've got Dave Grohl, the Foo Fighter guy who announced it on Instagram. So there is so much to discuss. So tune in next week and we will discuss children from affairs and how to navigate that one. That wraps another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty. You want to leave us a mighty story or a fuckwit of the week submission? Check out our new website, tellmehowyourmighty.com. That's yours spelt YOURE. We've got all the episodes, show notes, links to our guests, and you can see the tea room where Sarah and I first met. If you enjoyed this episode, please review the podcast and follow us. Thanks. See you next week.